Today I'm going to tell you a very long, moving story about one of the greatest men who ever lived, Abraham, and about his sons. Abraham was a kind, faithful man who loved God very much, and God had given him a wonderful promise that he would be the father of many nations. Abraham's life was full of blessings, but it was also full of hard choices, sadness, and sometimes great tragedy. In this story, we will learn about the lives and the tragic ends of Abraham's sons. We will see how their choices, their struggles, and the hardships they faced can teach us important lessons about life, love, and forgiveness. So, sit down, relax, and listen carefully as I share with you the story of the tragic end of Abraham's sons. Abraham was a man who loved God and followed his commands. God promised Abraham that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky and that they would become a great nation. Yet even with all these blessings, Abraham's life was not free of difficulties. His family was large and complicated, and his sons had very different lives. Some of his sons were born from his beloved wife Sarah, and some from other women. In the stories passed down through many generations, we learn about the sons of Abraham, each one with a unique story, each one carrying a piece of his great promise, and yet each one also facing their own share of hardship and sometimes tragedy. Let us begin by talking about the first of Abraham's sons, Ishmael. Ishmael was born to Hagar, who was Sarah's servant. In those days, Sarah had not yet been able to have a child, and so she gave Hagar to Abraham so that he might have a son. When Ishmael was born, there was much joy but also much tension. Even though Ishmael was Abraham's son, the family was filled with sorrow because Sarah longed for her own child. Over time, this tension grew, and eventually, Ishmael was sent away. He had to grow up in the wide, empty deserts, a land of scorching sun and endless sand. Ishmael's life became one of wandering and struggle. Even though God promised that Ishmael would become the father of a great nation, his life was filled with loneliness and hardship. The harshness of the desert and the feeling of being unwanted left a deep mark on him. Ishmael's story teaches us that even when we are born with a promise, if we are not cared for with love and kindness, our journey may be long and painful. Now let us turn our attention to Isaac, the beloved son of Abraham and Sarah. Isaac's birth was a moment of great joy. After many years of waiting and hope, Sarah finally had a child, and his name was Isaac. Isaac's life began in a warm home filled with love, and his parents treasured him dearly. Isaac grew up to be a gentle and kind child, and his life was filled with the promise of a bright future. However, Isaac's life was not free of challenges. One of the most famous moments in his story came when God tested Abraham's faith by asking him to offer Isaac as a sacrifice. Although this was only a test, God stopped Abraham just before he could harm Isaac. The event left a deep mark on everyone who heard it. It showed how much Abraham trusted in God, but it also reminded everyone of the pain and fear that can come with difficult choices. Isaac's life, even after that dramatic moment, was marked by the challenges that come with carrying on a great promise. The nation that grew from Isaac's line would later face wars, exile, and deep sorrow. Isaac's story is a reminder that even a life that starts with hope and love can be filled with many trials if people forget to care for one another. After Isaac was born, Abraham's family grew even larger when he married a woman named Keturah. With Keturah, Abraham had several more sons. Their names were Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Although these sons are not as well known as Ishmael and Isaac, their stories are also important and filled with lessons. Each of these sons grew up in a world that was both blessed and harsh. Their families spread out into distant lands, and the people who came from them would face many struggles. Some of these struggles were because of battles with enemies, while others were the result of hard living in lands that were far from the comfort of home. Though they inherited Abraham's promise, the sons of Keturah found that the road to keeping that promise was very difficult. They too faced heartache and the slow fading of a bright promise. Their stories teach us that no matter how wonderful a blessing may be, if it is not nurtured with care and love, it can slowly be lost. As we look at the lives of all of Abraham's sons, whether they were born to Hagar, to Sarah, or to Keturah, we see a tapestry of hope, sorrow, and hard lessons. Ishmael's life reminds us of the pain of being sent away and left to struggle in a harsh land. Isaac's life, with its moment of great testing and later trials, shows us the importance of trust and the heavy burden that sometimes comes with great promises. And the sons of Keturah remind us that even when a family is blessed, the challenges of the world can cause the bonds of love to weaken if they are not carefully maintained. Let us now think about the lessons these stories teach us. The story of Abraham's sons is not just an old tale. It is a guide for how we can live our lives today. It tells us that every choice we make has consequences. When we choose to act with anger or selfishness, we may hurt those around us and lose the chance to be truly happy. But when we choose kindness, when we care for one another, and when we forgive, we plant the seeds for a future full of hope. Imagine for a moment a large, beautiful garden. In this garden, every flower represents a person, and every tree represents a family. When we water the garden with love and kindness, all the plants grow strong and vibrant. But if we let the weeds of anger, jealousy, and hurt grow, the garden becomes overrun and the beauty fades away. The story of Abraham's sons is like this garden. Even though they were born with wonderful promises, if they did not care for each other, and if they let hurt and anger take root, their lives became full of sorrow. Ishmael's journey through the desert shows us that when someone is left alone and forgotten, they can feel lost and hopeless. His life was not filled with the warmth of a loving home, and that loneliness made his road very hard. We learn from Ishmael that every person deserves to feel loved and protected. No one should be left to wander alone in the harsh deserts of life. This lesson reminds us that we must always look after those who feel alone, whether they are our friends, our neighbors, or even people we have never met. Isaac's life, especially the great test of faith he was nearly caught up in, teaches us about trust and sacrifice. Even though that test was very frightening, it was a reminder that sometimes we must be strong and trust that everything will turn out well. But Isaac's later struggles also show us that even a life that starts with love can face great challenges if the people around do not continue to care for one another. Isaac's story is a reminder to always be gentle and caring, to remember the promises of love, and to hold on to faith even when things seem difficult. The sons of Keturah, though their stories may not be as famous, remind us that sometimes the blessings we receive can be scattered far and wide. Their families had to spread out over many lands, and they often found themselves fighting for their place in the world. Their tragic ends remind us that even when we are blessed, if we lose our unity and forget to work together, we can lose the very things that make us strong. Their lives teach us that unity and family are very important, and that every little part of a family or a community matters. All of these lessons come together to show us that life is full of choices, and every choice has a consequence. The tragic ends of Abraham's sons are not just about sorrow, they are also about hope and the chance to learn from the past. They teach us that even when things go wrong, there is always an opportunity to try again, to forgive, and to make things better. Imagine if, every time you felt hurt or angry, you decided to choose kindness instead. Imagine if, instead of holding on to pain, you chose to forgive your friends and family. Just like a garden that is watered with care, your heart would bloom with joy and love. That is the kind of world we can create if we learn from the stories of the past. Abraham's sons had many chances to choose love, but sometimes they chose anger or fear, and those choices led to deep sorrow. Their stories remind us that every day is a new chance to do what is right. Now let us remember the names of Abraham's sons, and think about what each of their lives tells us. Ishmael, born to Hagar, grew up in the desert and had to wander alone. His story tells us about the pain of being forgotten and the importance of always showing love and care to everyone. Isaac, the son of Sarah, was a gift of hope and love to Abraham and his family. His life, filled with tests of faith and challenges, reminds us that even the strongest promise needs care to remain bright. And then there are the sons of Keturah, Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua, whose lives spread out over many lands and who faced battles and hardships that show us how hard it can be to keep a family united when people are far apart. These stories, as long and as old as they are, speak to us in a language of hope and lessons. They tell us that every action we take matters. They show us that even if we start with a wonderful promise, if we do not nurture our relationships with love and care, our lives can become filled with sorrow and regret. When you are feeling sad or angry, remember the story of Abraham's sons. Remember that every time you choose kindness, you are making a choice that can help heal the world. Even a small smile, a gentle word, or a simple act of forgiveness can be as powerful as a bright light in the darkness. Think of the people you love, your family, your friends, even your teachers, and imagine that each one of them is like a flower in a garden. When you care for these flowers with a kind heart, they grow strong and beautiful. When you choose to forgive and let go of anger, you remove the weeds that might choke their growth. That is the lesson from Abraham's sons, that love and care are the keys to keeping the garden of our lives bright and full of hope. I want you to remember that no matter what happens, every day is a new beginning. Even if you have made mistakes or if someone has hurt you, you can always choose to forgive, to learn, and to love again. Just as the promise given to Abraham was meant to shine through all his descendants, the promise of love in your heart can shine through every day. It is never too late to plant a new seed of hope, to water it with kindness, and to watch it grow into something beautiful. Sometimes, the world can feel very heavy because of all the sadness and hurt that has happened in the past. But if we remember the lessons of Abraham's sons, we learn that even the hardest roads can lead to a place of light if we choose to walk them with love. Their tragic ends are not just stories of sorrow, they are reminders of what happens when we forget to care for one another, and they are also reminders of how we can change our path if we decide to turn our hearts toward kindness. I hope that, as you listen to this long story, you will think about your own life and the choices you make every day. Imagine that every time you say a kind word or share a smile, you are helping to build a world full of hope. Imagine that every time you forgive someone, you are opening a door for love to come in and heal a hurt heart. That is the power you have inside of you. In the end, the tragic end of Abraham's sons is a lesson for all of us. It tells us that no matter how grand a promise may be, it needs to be tended to with care. It tells us that if we let anger, fear, or hurt rule our hearts, we may lose the beautiful future that is meant for us. But it also tells us that even when things seem very sad, there is always a chance to start over, to forgive, and to choose love again. So, my dear friends, as we finish this long and thoughtful story, let us carry these lessons with us in our hearts. Let us remember Ishmael's lonely journey in the desert and strive to make sure that no one ever has to feel so alone. Let us remember Isaac's test of faith and promise, and know that every day is a new chance to trust in the goodness around us. And let us remember the scattered sons of Keturah, whose lives remind us that unity and caring for one another are the most important treasures of all. Every time you see a flower bloom, every time you feel a gentle breeze or see the bright light of the sun, remember that the promise of a beautiful future is always there if we take care of it. The story of Abraham's sons, with all its sorrow and its lessons, is a guide for how we can make the world a better place. It shows us that the smallest acts of kindness, the simplest words of forgiveness, and the most sincere gestures of love can change our lives and the lives of those around us. As you go about your day, think of this story and let it remind you that you are an important part of a great, beautiful garden. Every time you choose love over anger, every time you forgive a friend or help someone in need, you are planting a seed that will grow into a wonderful, lasting tree. The power of your choices is great, and your heart has the strength to bring light into even the darkest places. Imagine a world where every person, from the youngest child to the oldest grandparent, takes a moment every day to show kindness. Imagine that every tear is met with a hug, every frown with a smile, and every mistake with the chance to make it right. That is the world that the story of Abraham's sons inspires us to create. A world where love is stronger than pain, where unity overcomes division, and where hope shines brightly in every heart. Let this story be a gentle reminder that even if the past is filled with sorrow, and even if our hearts have known great pain, every new day is a gift. It is a chance to mend broken hearts, to build bridges where there were gaps, and to create a future that is filled with the warmth of love. The tragic ends of Abraham's sons are not only a record of what once was, they are lessons for what can be if we only choose to listen and learn. Take a deep breath and remember that your choices matter. Each time you act with compassion, you're making a difference. Each time you choose to forgive rather than hold on to anger, you are healing a little bit of the world. And every time you help a friend, every time you share your smile, you are showing that love is the most powerful gift of all. As we bring this long story to a close, let us promise ourselves that we will do our best to be the kind of people who spread hope and care wherever we go. Let the lessons of Abraham's sons remind us that our past does not have to define our future. Instead, we can learn from the mistakes and the hardships of those who came before us and work together to build a brighter, kinder world. Thank you for listening so carefully to this very long and thoughtful story about the tragic end of Abraham's sons. May the lessons you have heard fill your heart with hope, and may you always remember that no matter how dark things may seem, there is always a new day, a new chance to choose love, to choose forgiveness, and to help make the world a better place. May your life be filled with light, your days with joyful moments, and your heart with the gentle power of kindness. And whenever you feel alone or sad, think of the story of Abraham's sons, and remember that every tear can be wiped away by the promise of a new beginning. Your smile, your gentle words, and your acts of love are the seeds that will grow into a beautiful future for everyone. Thank you, dear friend, for sharing this journey with me. May you always have the courage to choose what is right, the strength to forgive, and the wisdom to care for those around you. And may the story of Abraham's sons guide you every day to build a life full of love, hope, and unity. Let us go forward with our hearts open, ready to learn from the past and to shape a future where every person is cherished, every family is united, and every promise is kept. Every choice you make matters, and every act of love brings us one step closer to the beautiful, caring world we all dream of. Goodbye for now, and may every day bring you new reasons to smile, to forgive, and to believe in the power of love. Always remember that even from the saddest stories can come the brightest lessons, and that every new beginning is a chance to create something wonderful. As we come to the end of our long journey through the lives of Abraham's sons, it is important to pause and think about all the lessons we have learned. Their stories are not just ancient tales of sorrow and struggle. They are guides that show us how our choices and actions can shape our lives and the lives of those around us. The legacy of Abraham is carried on by his children, and by examining their lives, we see that every path is filled with promise and peril, hope and heartache, unity and division. Abraham, a man of great faith and promise, was blessed by God with the promise that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky. Yet, even this great promise came with trials, heartbreak, and moments of deep sorrow. Abraham's sons, each born under different circumstances and to different women, carried that promise forward, but their journeys turned out to be very different from one another. In this conclusion, we will reflect on each son, what his life teaches us, and how his fate helps us understand the true meaning of love, unity, and forgiveness. Ishmael, the lonely wanderer of the desert. Let us begin with Ishmael, the first son of Abraham, born to Hagar, the servant of Sarah. Ishmael's birth came at a time when Sarah had not yet been able to have a child, and his arrival was intertwined with feelings of hope, frustration, and sorrow. From the very beginning, Ishmael's life was marked by tension and a sense of being unwanted. Although he was Abraham's son, he did not share in the same family joy that later would come with Isaac's birth. Instead, Ishmael grew up in an atmosphere of uncertainty and rejection. Ishmael's fate led him to the vast, barren deserts, a land of scorching sun, endless sand, and isolation. There he learned to survive on his own, wandering the desolate stretches of the earth. The harsh conditions of the desert not only tested his physical endurance, but also left deep emotional scars. Living in isolation, far away from the warmth and comfort of a united family, Ishmael's life became a symbol of loneliness and abandonment. His story teaches us several important lessons. First, it reminds us that every person, no matter how they come into this world, deserves to be loved and cared for. When a child grows up feeling rejected or unwanted, that pain can follow them into adulthood. Ishmael's life shows the heartbreaking reality of what happens when someone is left to fend for themselves in a harsh and unforgiving environment. But even in the midst of his suffering, Ishmael's life carries a message of hope. Despite the loneliness of the desert, God had promised that Ishmael would be the father of a great nation. This promise is a powerful reminder that even those who face great hardship have the potential to bring about something wonderful. Ishmael's resilience in the face of adversity teaches us that our circumstances do not define us entirely. Rather, the strength we gather from our struggles can help us grow and eventually to find our place in the world. In our modern lives, the lesson of Ishmael is clear. We must reach out to those who feel alone or abandoned. We must be the ones to offer a helping hand or a kind word so that no one is forced to wander through life feeling isolated. By embracing compassion and inclusion, we honor the memory of Ishmael and help build a community where everyone feels valued and loved. Isaac, the beloved son and the beacon of faith. Now let us turn our attention to Isaac, the long-awaited and beloved son of Abraham and Sarah. Isaac's birth was a moment of overwhelming joy, a fulfillment of a promise that had seemed almost impossible. In the eyes of Abraham and Sarah, Isaac was the very embodiment of hope and the future. His life began in an atmosphere of warmth and love, and he was nurtured in a family that had learned to trust in God's promises. Yet, even Isaac's life was not free from trials. One of the most famous and heart-wrenching episodes in his story is the test of sacrifice, a moment when Abraham was called upon by God to offer Isaac as a sacrifice. Although this command was only a test, and God ultimately stopped Abraham before harm could come to Isaac, the memory of that event left a profound impact on everyone who heard the tale. It is a story that speaks of faith, of the willingness to trust in something greater than ourselves, even when that trust demands an almost unbearable sacrifice. Isaac's story reminds us of the strength that comes from faith. Despite the anguish and the fear of that moment on the mountain, Isaac grew up to be a gentle and kind soul, a living testament to the love and dedication of his parents. His life was a continuation of the promise given to Abraham, a promise of abundance, of many descendants, and of a legacy that would endure for generations. However, the legacy of Isaac is also intertwined with the hardships faced by his descendants. The nation that grew from Isaac's line, the people of Israel, experienced countless trials over the centuries. Wars, exiles, conflicts, and moments of deep despair. These struggles show us that even when a life starts in the light of promise, the journey can be fraught with obstacles. Yet through it all, the enduring faith and resilience that Isaac inherited from his parents helped to sustain his people through the darkest times. Isaac's life offers us profound lessons about trust, perseverance, and the enduring power of hope. His journey teaches us that even when we face moments of great trial, our faith can be the guiding light that leads us through. When the road ahead seems uncertain or frightening, the memory of Isaac's quiet strength can remind us to hold on to hope and to trust that better days will come. Moreover, Isaac's life is a lesson in the power of gentleness and compassion. He was not a man of bluster or fierce ambition, but rather someone who embodied a quiet strength, a strength that comes from knowing who you are and believing in the goodness that lies ahead. In a world that often seems harsh and unforgiving, the gentle spirit of Isaac is a reminder that true courage is found in humility, in caring for one another, and in choosing faith over fear. In our own lives, the example of Isaac encourages us to nurture our inner light, to keep our hearts open to hope, and to maintain our trust in the promises that sustain us, even when those promises seem far away or difficult to grasp. Isaac's life shows us that the bonds of family and the strength of faith can carry us through even the most challenging times. The sons of Keturah, embracing diversity and the challenge of unity. After Isaac's birth and the fulfillment of many promises in his household, Abraham married Keturah, and with her he had several more sons. Their names, Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua, might not be as widely known as those of Ishmael and Isaac, but their stories carry equally important lessons. These sons grew up in a time when the legacy of Abraham was spreading far and wide, and their lives would eventually lead them to distant lands and different peoples. The sons of Keturah represent the diversity of destiny. Each one of them inherited a part of Abraham's promise, yet their lives took many different turns. Unlike Isaac, whose life remained closely tied to the promise of a single nation, the sons of Keturah became the founders of various tribes that spread out over wide regions. Their descendants faced their own battles, conflicts with neighboring peoples, and the challenges that come from living in lands that were often wild and unpredictable. This scattering of Abraham's offspring teaches us an important lesson about the nature of unity and diversity. Diversity can be a wonderful strength. It brings different ideas, cultures, and perspectives together. However, without a strong bond of unity and a shared commitment to the values of love and understanding, that very diversity can also lead to division. The story of the sons of Keturah is a reminder that no matter how far we roam or how different our paths may become, it is crucial to remember our roots and to hold on to the values that bind us together as one family. The lives of Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua show us that while the promise of a great heritage was bestowed upon Abraham's children, the challenges of the world, conflicts with others, the harshness of new lands, and the lure of different ways of life often led to separation and discord. Their scattered tribes, over time, sometimes lost the strong sense of identity that had once united them under the banner of a common promise. Instead, they encountered the harsh reality that without unity and mutual support, even the greatest blessings can begin to fade away. Yet, within this dispersal lies a vital lesson for us all. In our modern world, where differences abound and people often find themselves divided by language, culture, or geography, the story of the sons of Keturah calls us to remember the importance of unity. It tells us that while our individual paths may lead us to many different places, we must strive to build bridges between our diverse communities. The strength of a nation or of any family depends not only on the richness of its diversity, but also on the bonds of love and respect that hold it together. The sons of Keturah though not as prominent in the grand narrative as Isaac or Ishmael, are a symbol of the beauty and the challenge of living in a world full of differences. Their lives encourage us to embrace the diversity that surrounds us, while working hard to maintain a sense of togetherness and shared purpose. In doing so, we honor the legacy of Abraham, who was blessed with many children that would, in time, form the tapestry of nations and cultures that we see in the world today. A unified reflection on the legacy of Abraham's sons. When we look back on the lives of all of Abraham's sons, each with his own story, his own trials, and his own triumphs, we see a picture that is both complex and deeply instructive. Ishmael's life, with its poignant lessons on loneliness and the need for compassion, reminds us that every human being deserves to be embraced, regardless of how difficult their circumstances may be. His struggles in the desert speak to the universal need for care, support, and a sense of belonging. Isaac's journey, marked by both divine promise and profound testing, is a testament to the power of faith and the importance of nurturing hope, even when challenges seem insurmountable. Isaac shows us that love, when combined with trust in a greater plan, can overcome even the darkest moments. His gentle spirit and steadfast faith are qualities that can inspire us to be resilient, to hold on to our dreams, and to persevere even when the road ahead is steep and uncertain. Then there are the sons of Keturah, whose lives illustrate the challenges of maintaining unity in a world of diversity. Their story is a reminder that the blessings we receive must be actively preserved by nurturing our relationships and by making a conscious effort to keep the bonds of family strong. When we allow divisions to grow and let differences drive us apart, we risk losing the very promise that has been entrusted to us. The legacy of the sons of Keturah calls on us to celebrate our differences, while never forgetting that we are all connected by a common heritage of love, hope, and the shared desire for a better tomorrow. Together, these stories form a rich mosaic of life, a tapestry woven from threads of joy, sorrow, faith, and the struggle for unity. They remind us that every decision we make can either build up our communities or tear them down. In the lives of Abraham's sons, we see the consequences of actions taken in anger, fear, or neglect, as well as the possibility of redemption when we choose to forgive and to care for one another. As we reflect on these ancient stories, we must ask ourselves, what can we learn from the lives of Ishmael, Isaac, and the sons of Keturah? How can their experiences guide us in our own lives, in our own families, and in our own communities? First, we learn that every person matters. No matter how difficult someone's circumstances may be, every individual deserves compassion, respect, and love. Ishmael's life teaches us that neglect and abandonment can lead to a lifetime of hardship, and that it is our responsibility to reach out to those who feel alone. When we see someone struggling, we must remember that a small act of kindness, a smile, a helping hand, a kind word, can make all the difference. Second, we learn that faith and hope are powerful forces. Isaac's life, with all its challenges, reminds us that even in the face of great tests, holding on to faith can light our way. Life may not always go according to plan, and the promises we hold dear can sometimes seem distant or unattainable. Yet, if we keep our hearts open and trust in the goodness that lies ahead, we can find the strength to overcome any obstacle. Isaac's quiet determination and his ability to rise above fear are qualities that we can all aspire to, especially when the path before us is uncertain. Third, we learn that unity is essential. The story of the sons of Keturah shows us that diversity is a beautiful and valuable part of life, but it must be accompanied by a strong sense of community and togetherness. Without unity, even the greatest blessings can lose their luster. In our world today, where differences can sometimes drive us apart, the lesson of these scattered children is a call to bridge divides and to celebrate our shared humanity. The ties that bind us together, family, friendship, community, are the foundation upon which a better future is built. Moreover, the combined legacy of Abraham's sons invites us to consider the long-term consequences of our actions. Each decision, whether made in haste or with careful thought, can ripple through time and affect not only our own lives, but also the lives of those who come after us. The tragic ends and hard lessons of these ancient stories are reminders that our choices today create the world of tomorrow. They teach us that it is never too late to make a positive change, to mend broken relationships, and to work toward a future where love and understanding prevail over fear and division. Let us imagine for a moment a world where every person takes these lessons to heart. Imagine a world where no one is left to wander alone in a desert of neglect, where every heart is nurtured with kindness, and where the bonds of family and community are so strong that nothing can tear them apart. In such a world, the sorrow of the past would be transformed into hope for the future, a future built on forgiveness, on unity, and on the unwavering belief that every life has value. As we conclude this reflection, let us take a deep breath and remember that the stories of Abraham's sons are more than just historical accounts. They are living lessons that continue to guide us every day. They remind us that even the most tragic endings can contain the seeds of a new beginning if we choose to learn from our mistakes. They call on us to be mindful of our actions, to care for those around us, and to work together to create a world filled with compassion and understanding. So, dear friends, as we bring our long journey of reflection to a close, let us carry these lessons with us in our hearts. Let the legacy of Ishmael inspire us to reach out to those who feel isolated and forgotten. Let the steadfast faith of Isaac encourage us to trust in the goodness of life, even when the road ahead seems dark. And let the diverse yet united spirit of the sons of Keturah remind us that our strength lies in our ability to come together despite our differences. Remember, every day is a new beginning, a fresh chance to plant seeds of kindness, to nurture the relationships that matter, and to build a future where love reigns supreme. The stories of Abraham's sons, with all their pain and promise, serve as a timeless reminder that our actions have meaning, that our hearts have the power to heal, and that together we can overcome even the deepest sorrows. May you find comfort in the knowledge that you are never truly alone. May you always feel the warmth of love in your family and community. And may you be inspired to act with kindness, to forgive readily, and to hold fast to the hope that shines even in the darkest times. Thank you for spending this time reflecting on the lives of Ishmael, Isaac, and the sons of Keturah. May their stories guide you, may their lessons strengthen you, and may their legacy remind you that in every ending, there is a new beginning, waiting to bloom. Go forward with an open heart and a gentle spirit, knowing that every act of love and every word of kindness contributes to a brighter, more united world. Remember, as we have learned from these ancient stories, that every decision you make matters, and that by choosing compassion and unity, you can help create a future filled with hope, joy, and everlasting light.